Okay, we are live. Got the sign off. We are live. This is Senate Finance, um, Friday, January 12th. And the first item on the agenda is we're going to get a report on July flooding, mostly the fiscal impacts from Ted Brady. We've had the two largest cities that were hit, but there's a whole lot of towns out there. I know those of us in economic development have heard from them. I hesitate to call them up here individually because they're going up to a lot of committees. So I thought we'd just look at the league and have the league give us kind of an overview of what kind of fiscal situations the towns are finding themselves in. Ted, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Madam Chair, and thanks to Senate Finance for worrying about this issue so quickly in the session, and specifically for considering S-160 so quickly, the tax abatement issue. For the record, I'm Ted Brady. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We represent all 247 cities and towns here in Vermont. They're all members, and we are their mouthpiece in the legislature. You know this. I appreciate you having Barry and Montpelier in earlier this week, I believe. You know, they are amongst a plurality, not necessarily a majority, but a plurality of Vermont's municipalities that suffered damage due to the summer's flooding. What we see is that there are several dozen of that plurality that have extreme or at least impactful unexpected expenses that are putting pressure on their budgets. You know, most of them build their budgets in December, and right now the select boards are finalizing them for town meeting. We're seeing the largest expenditures to be related to storm cleanup, infrastructure repairs, tax abatements. Once again, thanks for S-160 and working on that, and lost revenue, things like sales tax, local option tax, parking fines, parking fees. You got a long list of things, all those revenues, electric and water, you know, for those dozen or so, more than dozen, almost 2 dozen municipalities that have municipal water and light companies or sewer and water companies. We thank you for taking this up. We kind of see 5 key areas in the legislature that we're hoping the legislature will act on, are 5 key municipal recovery actions. One is reimbursing municipalities for flood-related tax abatements. 2 is relief from the local match. Remember that all that FEMA money coming in, municipalities either have a 25 or 10% match that they need to make up. The state helps with that, but that's an important one to help with all of that. Revenue replacement, as we said, additional funding for something called the Flood Resilient Communities Fund that I understand you folks are coming up with a new name for, so we're not just restricted to that one type of disaster. And then attention to emergency preparedness coordination at the state and local level. What I'm saying there is this year, whatever VEM asks for, whatever the RPCs ask for disaster kind of recovery assistance and capacity in the future, please listen to them. You've probably heard from Doug Farnham on this. You know, of that $600 million in FEMA public assistance eligible projects that they've documented, that's kind of the damage estimate. About 205 million of that is municipal. So that means there's $205 million of roughly of FEMA eligible projects that's impacting the municipalities. What does that mean for municipalities? Well, figuring if we're lucky, which we think we are, we hit that 10% threshold. So, you know, municipalities are on the hook for about $20 million of that around the state. That's if that 10% match holds up. Also just want to highlight, you know, VLCT has shouldered some of the costs of the disaster. We're the property and casualty insurer, liability insurer for municipalities. Just to put it in perspective, we've seen about 97 loss claims in 36 different municipalities totaling around $10 million. Before I go into some specifics, and I'm going to avoid Montpelier and Barry, though they are the shocking numbers that really demonstrate this, I just want to highlight, and I put it in my prepared testimony and attached it for the committee, a great article by VT Digger from 2 days ago by Kevin O'Connor. If you haven't read that Digger piece, it puts the financial impact on these municipalities in a really good light, really good perspective. It helps understand the smallest communities, like the Marshfields, the Plainfields, that really got hit by this as well. So please take a peek at that article if you haven't already. But then I did a quick survey of municipal leaders around the state and just asked for an informal analysis of what they're looking at. And here's just a couple examples. In Chester, their damage from the storm amounted to $2.3 million. Their town manager tells me that $2.3 million manifests itself in 89 different FEMA projects, project worksheets, 89 of them. Because of this, FEMA doesn't give you that check. You have to do 89 pieces of paperwork to get that money. They've only had a couple of them actually acted on. I think only two have been obligated. Chester had to borrow $1.9 million using a current expense note. That's at the commercial rate, right? They're going out there and getting a bank loan for more than 5% for $1.9 million. I want to put that in perspective for you. The entire annual operating budget of Chester is less than $4 million. So that is a hard thing to deal with in town meeting day. In smaller towns like Hardwick, they're abating taxes. They've abated taxes on 6 properties totaling about $14,000. There's more to come. Like Chester, they have these public assistance pieces of paperwork in process. Even after they get reimbursed, Hardwick thinks the impact this year is going to be about $75,000 on their budget, largely due to FEMA match and lost water and wastewater revenue. Towns like Woodstock, they might not have abated taxes yet, and they don't have huge impacts this year, but they think there will be future year impacts to deal with tax abatement and infrastructure projects and mitigation projects. In Richmond, they haven't abated any taxes, but even so, they still have an estimate in their budget this year of non-reimbursable disaster work to the tune of about $85,000. In the town of Johnson, in the village of Johnson, I apologize, their water and wastewater revenues are down 10%. Electric revenues are down 5%. Those are big numbers to have to try to swallow. So that's the heart of what I wanted to share today. I understand that you folks might be looking at S160 after this, and I did want to highlight a couple of quick points, and I appreciate that you're trying to get this out quickly, and we fully support that. So don't let what I'm about to share with you slow that down, because there's still a legislative process. I hope we could find a way to deal with a couple of these issues. First, any abatement assistance should consider reimbursing municipalities for a portion of the municipal tax abated. I understand that the ed fund's the focus of this bill, but let's not forget municipalities had to abate the municipal side of things also, and this isn't because they wanted to or because they chose that, to have this disaster hit them. So this seems like a shared expense that we all Vermonters should share in. And to ensure fairness and equity across municipalities, I hope we could extend the date where towns can apply for, and that the abatement has to occur by June 30th of 2024. That would allow the smaller towns, Barry, God bless Carol Dawes and the team in Barry City. They are out there advertising and helping people get their abatements done. The smaller towns might not have the capacity to have done that yet, and this would give them this indication that they should do it. And finally, this is actually my final thing. I want to thank you for including the word "or" in the qualifications for what qualifies for abatement. After Irene, the abatement bill that went through required some onerous tests that many Vermonters didn't qualify for. So well done. I guess that wasn't my final thing, because I did have one last thing. I'm sorry. Just to let you know what we've been doing, we hired Katie Buckley, a former town manager in Guilford, town administrator in Guilford, and Bonnie Waninger, former planning commission director in Central Vermont, to do federal funding work post Infrastructure and Jobs Act. We pivoted them earlier this year to focus almost entirely on flood recovery. Since then, they built a website that's gotten 7,000 views. We've made more than 300 individual contacts to help municipalities recover, and we've worked hand in glove with the RPCs and VEM, the real workhorses of municipal disaster recovery. And we've also partnered with the Treasurer's Office and the Bond Bank to make a subsidized loan program available for municipalities to carry the cost of disaster recovery. So thanks. I hope the testimony gives you kind of a snapshot. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Ted? None? Okay, I guess we all agree that the towns have taken a pretty heavy hit. So, and some of us have heard this in other committees.
Yep.
So, I'm not seeing any, so thank you. And Julia is due about now, right?
Yeah, I told her to wait 5 minutes because I figured this wouldn't take a third of the amount of scheduled time, so
Okay.
she should be here in 4 minutes.
Okay, she'll be here in 4 minutes.
Ed, if you stay on, I just want to look at my list from this morning because I feel like I had something I wanted to ask you in economic development.
Happy to stick around.
Thank you.
There's a lot of overlap going
I
on
know.
in economic development and finance this year. This is kind of the melting pot. Half of us are in natural resources and half of us are in economic development.
Yeah.
This may be where the battle gets fought out.
I did try to change the testimony from my Senate Economic Development testimony earlier.
There you have it. This could be it. This could be what made me think of you. There are different proposals bubbling up for rental registry. There are towns that feel really strongly that it helped them locate housing and supports for flood victims. I'm not asking you to take a position, but we will need to look at different models and the burden that it might place on, town government to collect information. So I just want to make sure you're clued into that conversation and can stay engaged with that.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, whatever comes to pass on that, it's like you can't just throw more tasks on a municipality to help build that. You need to adequately fund it and adequately tell towns what they have to do and give them assistance doing it. And ideally, the state, seems like a great function for the state to take a leadership role in. So I think from our perspective, it's just don't tell us to do anything without giving us resources to do it, I guess.
Right. My goal would be a model that requires landlords to fill out the landlord certificate, because it's quite optional depending on our renter's gumption to sort of ask their landlord to get that information in, but we'll see. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear.
And I think the other, I sat on this building code study, the energy code study committee this summer. And, one of the solutions to getting people to comply with the energy code was to have them file a piece of paperwork with the town clerk that had absolutely zero follow-up from the state, had zero ramifications if he didn't fill out the piece of paperwork. And the municipalities were put in this awkward position of saying, yes, you must fill out this paperwork. Well, what happens if we don't? Well, I guess you don't fill out the paperwork.
Right.
And don't add a valueless step, right? Make sure it really adds value.
Hear you on that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
volunteers in most cases.
if I may, Madam Chair, on the valueless piece of paper, we'll be working on that, Ted.
Yes. Appreciate the leadership you did on that this summer, Senator.
Well, it's a little bit of a discombobulated quote unquote system at the moment.
Yeah.
So hopefully we connect the parts over time and it works. Yeah.
This might be a good moment to say, Senator Bray, we're anticipating that your committee is working on building codes first. It's not in our bill.
When we're not doing building code in general, we're doing the energy code.
Right. Whatever the study committee's scope was. It's just
Right. Well, yes. So we have that bill, and but you're raising a very good point. These two things get conflated all the time. Energy code, building code. We don't have a building code either, and that's like the long story that we're not going to try to get to.
But Division of Fire Safety was in your study group, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if what we might pay attention to, because I've just heard Ted talk about all the flood related issues that towns are dealing with. And those are ongoing issues. You've got displaced people, you've got, all kinds of physical damage. We, just looking at the fact that we have waiting study, starting this year, and it's hitting with all kinds of other issues and have created a perfect storm. And I think if we want towns to do things, I think we need to be able, because I don't know what you guys are doing down the hall, and we probably should try and get them out in small pieces, like one requirement a year, so the towns can catch up, because most of them are 3 to 5 volunteers on a board, and a town clerk. The town clerks do town clerk work. So and I think that the waiting thing and the impact it looks like it might be having on this year's perfect storm, I think is making me think about that. We never thought about what that would do when we did it. And it was a good thing to do, but need to be cognizant. Julia has arrived, so do we have any more questions for Ted? Okay, we don't. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
Yes. And it looks like it might
Bye.
spell this. We had 10 whole minutes of sun. That's got to be a record. And it's now gone.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Okay, Julia.
All right. Would you like me to join you?
Yes, come on up. We're just looking. I guess our last witness has decided they don't need to come, so we're doing this, and then I'm hoping we might vote act once, Bill won at 60 out, so that we can get that moving to the towns. That's the abatement bill.
Sure. It is. So good afternoon. For the record, I'm Julia Richter with the Joint Fiscal Office. I believe that you would like me to share the fiscal note. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want me to share my screen or just talk through? I know you've got.
Committee, do you want to see the screen? It's posted on on the committee page. And I
You
don't,
want me to see the screen.
yeah,
I don't have to go back and forth.
I think you can just go through it. It's
Okay.
pretty simple.
Do you mind inviting me into the room? So while I'm working to join the room, I will just mention that it is published, Madam Chair mentioned, on the committee page under your name. Before walking through the fiscal note, is there any other thing you would like me to talk about with respect to this?
If you think there's something we should know that we missed, by all means do that. Other than that,
Okay.
we're looking for this is as simple a bill as I think we're going to see this year.
Okay.
Maybe. It is on the screen, so we're making progress.
Thank you for your patience. Mind enabling screen sharing, please?
Who's now our co-host?
All right,
We're making progress.
we are.
There we go.
All right, there we go. So this is thank you for helping me with that. This is the fiscal note for S-160 and act relating to state education property taxes and flood-related damage. JFO estimates this bill will cost approximately $1.1 million to the education fund in fiscal year 24. This is a consensus estimate with the administration. And as the committee is well aware, because it is a costly education fund, absent any other changes in policy, the statewide homestead property yield and or the statewide non-homestead property tax rate will need to be adjusted to account for the anticipated cost of the property tax abatement reimbursement.
Okay. So we will be sharing the loss with the towns. They lost it, we lost it. All right,
Yeah, so this is only picking up that statewide
right,
property tax abatement, not the municipal.
right. Well, right now, the municipalities have lost properties on their grand list. They don't have the property, but they are still obliged to pay the full school tax to the state. This says they don't have to pay that school tax to the state on behalf of the properties that are in some cases down the river.
Exactly, yes. And so the bill does spell out that for a municipality to qualify for these tax abatements, it must have been abated in proportion to the municipal tax that abated the statewide property tax. And there's a list of eligibility for the properties that would qualify for the property tax abatement at the statewide level. There's one other piece that is estimated to have a de minimis impact on the education fund, and that's section 2. And it clarifies that when calculating the homestead property tax credit, that all disaster relief payments shall be excluded.
That's right. And we talked about that the other day. That's if you get income sensitivity, that if you've got a $10,000 award from FEMA to move your electric boxes and things upstairs, that is not counted as income.
Exactly. So it's what is the household income, not factoring in those FEMA payments.
Does it lower your, assume because that money is in the electrician's hand now and not available to pay taxes. Okay, questions? Randy?
Minor nitpicking, bullet number 3 in section 1, the word utilities is misspelled.
Thank you. I will.
Comment of the day.
Well, I appreciate it. I will correct it and send Zane an updated version with the typo corrected. Thank you for that.
We will have an updated version for our official files. All right, with that Scribner's correction, committee, any other questions, comments? Julia, maybe you can take that down so I can see the committee. Right now, all I see is Senator Hinsdale. Now I see everybody. Okay, Senator McCormick, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not arguing. I'm just surprised. I would have thought this would cost more. It's I was thinking with the extent of damage from the flood and the number of people who would want abatements, that we'd be compensating for a bigger loss than that.
Yeah, so this is generally in line with the estimates and the overall cost after Hurricane Irene. This bill follows a very similar structure. The way we reached the estimate was to look at the estimated total sum of damages across properties in the state, and then apply the minimum possible tax rate, the maximum possible tax rate, the average possible tax rate factored in the CLA, and kind of the different ways of poking at it. We landed right around 1.1 million.
Okay, that's good news.
Yeah, I think when we were drafting these bills, this one and the House bill, that was very good news. Because that is decimal dust in what we're looking at in the ed fund. I think the estimate was to get the increase down to 10%, we might have to find $120 million. So this is minimal, and it will help the towns a lot. Any questions, comments? If not, we have this bill on for a vote. Is the committee ready to vote? Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that I don't have the bill number right in front of you. It's S-160, correct?
Yes, 160.
I would move that Senate Finance report favorably S-160.
Okay, Senator Bray has moved that we report Senate Finance report S-160 out favorably. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, oh, we don't have a clerk.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Do you
I
have a
can
sheet? Can you keep it?
yes, I can keep track of the book, yeah.
Okay, so
Wow.
all those in favor of reporting S-160 out favorably, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. I'm calling that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. Here we're missing 5, 6, 2, 5, 0, 2. Okay, thank you. We will have something to report to the Senate Secretary when she sticks her head in here in a minute. The last one we had was landlord notice of utility disconnect. The people said they wanted to speak, but when we said we weren't going to really deal with the bill because 99% of it had already gone in the Homes Act, they withdrew their request to speak. So we had them on, and I guess we just found out they.
I'm not entirely, Faith was communicating with them and stopped including me on the emails. I assume
Okay.
that's what happened. I reached out to her, but she has not responded.
Okay, no, she's not with us anymore. He dropped an email, you know who was coming? He dropped an email.
Yeah, I didn't go back to where she was.
Why
coming.
don't we take a 10-minute break so we can see if we can find the PUC, and if they're not coming, then we're done. And next week, we will have only one person doing the agenda, so hopefully we won't
This will
have.
not happen again, I promise.
At least not this way.
And our,
There's always something else will go wrong. All right, so,
we
why
need
don't-
to- pardon me, sorry. Are we going to be logging out and back in, or just mics off and hold for 10 minutes?
I think we'll just put it on hold. In the old days, we used to have a sign that we shut off the audio and video and said we were on recess. But I think if you just shut
Okay.
off the audio and video,
Yeah, I'm gonna turn off the live stream and then
Yeah.
mute us.
well, then you'll have to go back live stream, I think is what they were
Yeah.
doing. Yeah. Okay, so we'll come back about 25 after, and we will see if we have another set of witnesses.